The world is being destroyed by different types of monsters. Humans scream and run, trying to escape the beasts. Dragons fly in the sky, shooting powerful beams at anyone in their path. On the ground, orcs, wolves, and other creatures tear people apart like paper. It all started when the gates opened, bringing the monsters into the world. The number of humans dying to these monsters is countless. Only a small group of people awaken supernatural abilities. These people are called the saviors of humanity, the last line of defense for the earth. They are the players. The players fight the monsters with their great powers, magical swords, and other weapons. They are the only ones who can fight back against otherworldly creatures. Among the players is Lee Hyun-wook, our hero, who is an F-rank player. He is called the Great Steel Emperor and is known as the last savior of humanity, or at least, that's what he hoped. However, his hopes are shattered. Right now, Lee in his military uniform is struggling during military exercise. A group of soldiers is seen sticking their heads to the ground, following orders. The commanding officer walks down the stairs and tells them to straighten up. The camp is called the Anti-Monster Troop, where players who have awakened their skills must serve. There is a goofy poster on the wall with a bright smile and a thumbs up as if the training will be easy. The poster suggests that it is something to be proud of, but the reality is far different. Lee struggles and complains, wondering how he ended up in this position if he is truly the last savior of humanity. They are at the AMP shooting range, a large area in the middle of nowhere. This is where players are trained to become heroes capable of defending lives. The commanding officer yells at them, claiming they are the strongest, but then scolds them for losing track of 9 cartridges. It seems they lost valuable equipment. While everyone keeps holding the uncomfortable position, Lee quietly uses his power. With just the tip of his index finger, he makes a bullet cartridge case fly out of one of his pockets. He carefully controls the cartridge and guides it to his mouth and eats it. It looks strange, but that's what earns him the title of the Great Steel Emperor. The commanding officer asks them all if they are in their right minds. With their heads on the ground and their asses in the air, the soldiers all answer, no, at the same time. However, during all this, Lee is focused on something else. He looks at the system window beside him and reads the information displayed. It says that the weight of metal he can manipulate is 300 grams. His power allows him to control metal around him, depending on how much metal he consumes. With a serious expression, he treats the bullet cartridge like chewing gum. He wonders how anyone could expect him to be in his right mind when this is his second time in the army. Earlier, when monsters were rampaging through the city, Lee spits blood as he takes a huge amount of damage from an enemy. This will happen in the near future. Lee lies helpless on the ground, unable to move. A mysterious man, wearing a white robe and a strange plague mask, approaches Lee. In the background, countless human bodies are piled up, showing that the players have lost the battle. The city, once beautiful, is now in ruins with destroyed buildings and a completely changed landscape. An explosion happens in the distance, and the light from it casts shadows on the lifeless bodies of the citizens. There are no survivors: men, women, the elderly, and children, all killed without mercy. Yet, no monsters are visible. Lee holds back tears and bitterly says to that mysterious man that it wasn't the monsters who killed humanity. Instead, it was the players who destroyed the human race. The man in the white robe knows who Lee Hyun-wook is. He calls him humanity's last hero, the Great Steel Emperor. But then, the man removes his mask, looks at Hyun-wook, and changes his words. He calls him by his real name, Lee Hyun-wook. This man, though clearly a human player, has red eyes with reptilian pupils, showing that he has abandoned his humanity. He refers to himself and others like him as divine creatures. He says that they didn't betray humanity. Instead, he believes it was their duty as divine creatures to judge humanity, and that is exactly what they did. Hearing the self-righteous words from that blonde idiot, Lee grits his teeth to hold back his anger. He tells them that they are nothing but villains. If only he had known how to grow stronger sooner, even a day earlier, he would have easily defeated them. In this world, humans who sold their souls to the devil and began slaughtering humanity are seen as villains. The blonde idiot smiles mockingly at Lee and asks if he is frustrated. Just then, another muscular man with a strange, large hammer walks toward Lee. The blonde idiot continues to taunt Lee. Despair and helplessness take over the once strong-willed hero, and he can no longer stop the tears from falling. The blonde idiot laughs, saying someone like Lee, an F-rank, would have died instantly, even if he had known everything earlier. The muscular man raises his huge hammer, planning to crush Lee. The blonde villain says this is the most fitting death for an F-rank. In his final moments, Lee shouts the name of the blonde villain, Gordon Tracy. The hammer falls, and just like that, Lee Hyun-wook, humanity's last hero, dies. But then something unexpected happens. He is sent back in time. Lee is shocked. He never imagined something like this would happen. Time regression. Something only seen in web novels is happening to him. A notification window appears, congratulating him for realizing how to become stronger. It also says he has 10 minutes until metal absorption, and the weight of metal currently available for manipulation is 300 egg. Just then, The commanding officer declares that now he will fix the soldiers' rotten minds. He tells them, when he says 1, he expects them to answer soldier. And when he says 2, they should respond with mindset. And they are in an odd position, and Lee is clearly struggling with this harsh position. His body trembles from the numbness, but he realizes that this is fine because he's back in the past, even if his skills are back at the starting point. The strange mindset training begins. The commanding officer shouts, and the cadets respond with the correct phrases. Regression is fine for Lee, but he can't help wondering why it had to happen during his time in the army. Later, they go back to campus. Soldiers line up in neat rows, their weapons at their sides. The commanding officer tells Platoon 3 Squad 2 to enter the building. It seems to be the canteen, as some of the soldiers whisper about today's menu, which will be stir-fry with chicken stew. Lee hears this and makes his stomach growl. He reflects that he never thought he would be back here. Just as Lee and his squad are about to enter the mess, the officer tells them to stand by. Lee raises his hand, but the officer tells him they need to do something before they can eat. Lee protests, saying that they just returned from training and are starving, so they should be allowed to eat first. But the commanding officer just smirks in a menacing way and asks what kind of training Lee is talking about. He calls Lee a loser. Lee reflects. He almost forgets it's about this guy. The army's garbage. Oh, Sanguk. Sanguk walks up to Lee with authority and angrily asks if Lee wants his squad to do the work. He taps Lee's helmet in an attempt to mock him, saying that F ranks like Lee can't even level up, so they might as well do more work instead. This is the only purpose they have. Back in his previous life, Lee thought he would never get past being an F rank. Sangok flips head back and asks if the F rankers will take responsibility if something urgent happens while they are working. He believes they are so weak that they won't contribute anything. The other soldiers laugh and smirk, watching an F rank corporal get bullied in front of his squad. Lee's eyes show anger as he stares at his superior. But he isn't angry at Sanguk. He is frustrated at how much of a loser he was back then, allowing trash like Sanguk to order him around. Sanguk doesn't take his glare lightly. He becomes agitated and prepares to punish Lee. He gets ready to use his power and asks Lee if he wants to fight, reminding him that he is a D rank. Lee takes a deep breath, collects himself and smiles. He tells Sanguk that he will do as he says, but at least let him and his squad eat first. Sanguk doesn't like this attitude and prepares himself to attack, but Lee quickly points out that others are watching the situation. If this continues, people will think Sanguk is being abusive. Lee adds that he is worried that his superior might get involved in rumors when Sanguk is supposed to be a respected person in society in the future. Sanguk thinks about Lee's words and it hits him. He calms down quickly and, in an obedient tone, Lee tells him that since his order, they will eat quickly and finish the work as well. Sanguk clears his throat and tells Lee he did good work. Then, he scolds everyone who is standing idle and commands them to go eat. Although everything goes smoothly, Lee has lost his appetite. He tells his squad member, Park Jomo, to go ahead and eat with the others. Jumo is concerned about Lee but has no choice but to obey. Sanguk, on the other hand, is surprised by Lee's sudden change in attitude. He has never seen Lee act like this before, and it feels different to him. Lee walks away, feeling both down and angry. He was holding back all his rage, but inside, he is about to explode. He quietly praises himself for handling the situation well. That frustrating encounter is nothing compared to what Gordon Tracy did to him. Lee grits his teeth angrily, cursing at the son of a doggy. He thinks if he has to stay at the camp longer because of this trouble, he won't be able to catch up to that bastard. Lee eats another piece of metal, which increases the weight of metal he can manipulate to 309 grams. He smiles as he takes out a couple of metal spoons. The reason he went out of sight is that he doesn't want anyone to know that he has found a way to level up. Back at the cafeteria, where all the soldiers are eating, a commotion starts. They notice that all the spoons are missing and begin pointing fingers, trying to figure out who took them. One of the squad members asks Park Jomo about the spoons, but he has no idea where they went. Meanwhile, Lee is happily eating all the spoons that the soldiers are searching for. He gulps them down like they're tasty snacks. Lee then looks at his weapon, the M7 bayonet, which weighs 140 grams. If he wants to add more weight to the weapon for more impact, it will be the only thing he can control with the weight manipulation he has available right now. He finds himself in a tough situation. Cartridges are just 1 gram and spoons only 1.25 grams. It will take too long to level up significantly with such small weights. He thinks to himself that if what he has in mind is his only option, he has 3 days to prepare. After that, he has to defeat a boss mob at level 1. He then tests his power by lifting the bayonet with his mind. With a satisfied smile, he declares to the world that he will show them what it means to be an expert. 3 days later, the darkness of the night covers the 3rd Brigade, 1st Battalion Station, Namsan 5th Post. Lee and Private Park Jomo are standing guard at one of the posts. The private can't help but notice that Lee seems different lately. He tells him that he thinks the corporal has changed. Lee, however, is not very concerned and keeps checking his watch. He asks the private if it makes him uncomfortable. The private says it doesn't bother him, but Lee is focused on his system window, which now shows that he can manipulate more weight. His total weight manipulation has increased to 1,359 grams. The private continues, saying he believes Lee has changed for the better. Suddenly, Lee walks toward him without saying a word, surprising Junmo. He thinks he must have said something wrong, but instead of getting scolded, Lee asks him if he trusts him completely. Confused by the sudden question, the private says that he does. Satisfied with the answer, Lee smirks and reloads his gun, leaving Junmo even more confused. Meanwhile, near the camp in the darkness of the night, a portal opens out of nowhere, and ugly goblins start coming out of it. With evil smiles, they wield their weapons. They look down from the mountain and plan to attack the camp, where most of the soldiers are sleeping. One of the goblins shouts their battle cry, but before he can do anything, a flying knife strikes him, taking him down in one hit. The one who threw the knife is none other than Lee, who went alone to the enemy spawn. The monsters sneer and growl at him, recognizing him as a threat. It turns out this is what Lee had been waiting for over the past 3 days. He smiles and tells the beasts that he has been expecting their arrival. Just then, something catches his attention, and he turns around to look. The monster he attacked earlier isn't finished yet. Though it's bleeding heavily from the attack, the ugly creature somehow manages to get back on its feet. Lee has never failed an ambush in his past life, and this moment is a harsh reality check. He realizes that he is still level 1. This is his second chance at life, and he really doesn't want to repeat the same work twice. The disgusting monster launches itself at Lee, moving like a straight arrow, ready to take revenge. But before it can close the distance, Lee throws a knife, cutting its head off in midair. The head flies away, and the body rolls on the ground. Now, the remaining monsters are furious. They pull out their weapons, preparing for a full-on attack. The corpse of the monster drops a red crystal-like object. Lee manipulates the drop, guiding it to his mouth and swallows it. The monsters watching him are stunned. One of them just dropped that thing, and this guy casually eats it. With a sour look on his face, Lee remembers the awful taste. He knows it is mana steel, something that will help him grow stronger. No matter the kind of steel, it still doesn't change the fact that even the monsters find what he did disgusting. The status window congratulates Lee for having consumed a mana steel, a metal from another world. It also states that his mana will increase after absorption, though the expected weight increase is still unknown. This makes Lee extremely happy. It means that from now on, if he eats every item he comes across, the difficulty of his life will become much easier. With that done, it's time to resume the battle against the monsters. Lee takes control of his bayonet and declares that the mukbang starts now. Before continuing the epic massacre, let's go back to what happened after Lee reloaded his gun in front of Private Junmo. He tells the private that he senses metal moving, which confuses Junmo. He had been told that Lee could only manipulate the metal he could see, which is true. Juno immediately informs his corporal that he will make a report as soon as possible. But Lee replies, saying that the branch office won't believe that an F rank could manipulate something as complex as that. So, Lee says he will go check the situation himself and asks the private to stay on guard and wait for him. He also warns him not to report anything to the higher-ups. Inside, he reflects if the military finds out, all the weapons will belong to them, and he'll miss his chance to get stronger. In present, the monsters charge toward Lee furiously, wielding their blades, thirsting for his blood. In response, Lee marches forward as well, expertly controlling his bayonet to kill the enemies in the most efficient way possible. Lee does a barrel roll to avoid the attacks from the vanguard monsters, slipping past their first line of defense. With their backs wide open, he sends his spinning bayonet flying toward them, hitting their vulnerable spots. The monsters scream in pain as they're struck. Lee, being an experienced player, skillfully aims for their feet, instantly immobilizing them. Meanwhile, above the battlefield, one particular monster watches from a tree branch. This one seems to be of a higher rank, with a more muscular build and sharper teeth. Lee enjoys tormenting the ugly creatures, taunting them to keep screaming while he takes their lives. Suddenly, one monster manages to sneak up on him from his blind spot and is about to strike with its blade. But Lee is quick to react. He uses his power to influence the monster's blade, redirecting it and using it to parry the sneak attack. The weapon flies away with the force of the impact, and the monster's hand is dislocated. The monster, distracted by its weapon, doesn't notice his next move. With a swift motion, Lee cuts its throat with the spinning bayonet. The monster screams in agony, but no sound comes out because its throat has been slit open. Blood gushes from every opening in its neck. Lee deliberately makes the monster suffer as much as possible, hoping to maximize its fear. This will affect the other monsters as well, weakening their resolve. With the drop of the mana steel, it's clear that the poor monster has been finished off. Lee angrily tells the terrified creatures that the monster was killed because it tried to stab him in the back. Lee rages at them, furious that they had the nerve to attack him from behind. His face contorts with pure anger as he declares that if anyone else tries this, he will eat them alive. His intense, murderous intent is so powerful that it freezes the monsters in place. They now understand that they are dealing with someone far more dangerous than they imagined. Lee has successfully instilled enough fear into these dumb creatures, making them lose their will to fight. The mob start to hesitate, unsure of what to do next. Lee looks around, searching for what he calls the main course for tonight. His eyes move left and right, feeling frustrated as he tries to spot it. In the past, he had learned other methods of detecting enemies. The target he seeks is the cunning boss monster, who is currently hiding in the trees. Since the enemy is too reluctant to reveal itself, Lee knows he needs to lay bait. He notices the mana stone dropped by the corpse of one of the dead goblins and pretends to take it defenselessly, giving the boss monster a perfect chance to strike. Sure enough, the ugly beast falls for it. It immediately grabs one of the plates hanging around its neck, preparing to attack Lee, making sure it doesn't miss this big opportunity. Meanwhile, Lee continues with his plan, casually leaning to grab the mana steel from the ground. Unlike the shaman, the other goblins simply stand there, too afraid to act, still paralyzed by fear. The shaman quickly starts casting a spell using one of its amulets. Runic glyphs appear around it, showing that the spell has been activated. Sensing the shaman is about to make its move, Lee grins with a sinister smile, like a predator spotting its prey. Now he just has to wait until the shaman finally reveals itself. The ugly shaman, thinking it has the advantage over Lee, smirks, confident that it will catch the enemy by surprise. After completing the spell, the shaman breaks the amulet to start the attack. The moment the stone breaks, the ground below Lee begins to rupture, shaking his foothold. But his face shows no fear, only a smile. This was exactly what he expected. He knows he has finally located the shaman's position. A few seconds later, rock spikes shoot out of the ground, attacking anyone above. Even the shaman's own underlings get caught in the attack. The strike is powerful, and the rumbling shakes the area, but it's not strong enough to cause a huge disturbance. Back at the camp, one soldier feels a slight tremble in the ground and asks his platoon leader about it. However, the platoon leader, trying to get some peaceful sleep, is not bothered by such a minor shake. He warns his subordinate not to wake him up again for something so trivial. Back at the battlefield, the sight is gruesome. The lifeless bodies of goblins are impaled by earth spikes. However, Lee is nowhere to be seen. The remaining goblins, still alive, are paralyzed with fear, staring at the bodies of their dead comrades, scared out of their minds. The shaman stares at the aftermath of its spell. A huge cluster of spikes, covered in smoke and dust, can be seen from a distance. The shaman, feeling proud, breathes in the fresh air, satisfied with the work he has done. He is extremely happy with himself, until he suddenly hears a voice saying, "I found you." The words send an immediate chill down his spine. Lee clears the smoke around them with his spinning blade attack. The blade flies quickly toward the shaman. Just as it is about to strike, the shaman manages to deflect it, showing why he is the boss of the goblins. Lee pretends that his surprise attack has failed, trying to mock the shaman. Hearing this, the shaman laughs, thinking that he has outsmarted Lee. However, Lee reveals that the first attack was just a feint. From the side, the bayonet comes in fast, and the shaman notices it too late. It's only inches away from hitting him. Lee believes the battle is over, thinking it was too easy. But just when he thinks victory is in his grasp, he sees something unexpected. In a shocking turn, the goblin boss manages to grab the bayonet just in time, leaving him with only a small scratch on his neck. Lee realizes that the goblin boss is no ordinary monster. He has enough abilities and skills to defend himself. The shaman, now enraged, bares his fangs at Lee. Lee smiles. He wasn't expecting the enemy to catch his blade, but he isn't impressed by the goblin's skills. Instead, he is disappointed in his past self for being so weak. The sneak attacks are over, and it is now time to fight for real. The shaman stands tall, confident that he and his gang can defeat Lee. Lee tries to taunt him, aiming to draw him away from his vantage point. He claims that he will slice every last one of them in one go. But in reality, Lee is in a tough spot. He is completely surrounded, and the boss is now out of reach. The shaman is now facing him head-on, and due to this, the other goblins have snapped out of their fear and have returned to their senses. They are now in high spirits, ready to take on Lee. To make the situation even worse, a notification pops up, stating that Lee has consumed mana rapidly in a short amount of time, leaving him with only 40% of his mana. This is starting to worry Lee, and he realizes he needs to be more careful and efficient with his mana usage. Given the circumstances, he has no choice but to use his rifle, something he prefers not to do. He wanted to finish the shaman with his own abilities and eat its mana steel, but the situation leaves him with little choice. Just as Lee is thinking of ways to end the battle quickly, the shaman raises his staff, preparing for another attack. Lee's attention is focused on the fight, but then something catches the boss's eye. The shaman smiles, recognizing an opportunity. Lee is about to start his barrage when suddenly a voice is heard from a distance. It's Park Jummo, who has left his post to search for his corporal. Lee is distracted by Jummo's voice and immediately turns around, concerned for the private's safety. The oblivious Jummo shouts out, unaware of the monsters that surround him. Seeing this, the shaman orders his subordinates to attack the unsuspecting private. In an instant, all the goblins surrounding Lee leap into action, charging toward Jummo. Lee has no choice but to prioritize the safety of his soldier. He quickly takes his focus off the boss and turns to assist the private, knowing he needs to protect them at all costs. Jummo shouts in surprise when he sees the incoming monsters. One of them manages to close the distance and is about to slash him in half. Lee quickly orders the private to duck and get down. Just in time, the bullets reach the attacking goblin before its blade can touch Jummo. However, Lee knows that bullets alone won't be enough to kill the goblin. He manipulates a blade to finish it off, but the goblin easily deflects it. These goblins are getting better as time goes on. Still, it's not enough to defeat Lee, who was once called humanity's last savior. Lee follows up his attack with a flying kick, then proceeds to unload his magazine straight into the goblin's mouth at point-blank range. After taking down the first goblin, Lee quickly turns around to face the other monsters. But to his surprise, no enemy is in sight, except for Jummo, who is curled up in a fetal position on the ground. The monsters have fled the scene, knowing they don't stand a chance against Lee in a direct fight. Lee grits his teeth in frustration. The enemies were more cautious than he expected, which led to his failure to completely exterminate them. Meanwhile, the sound of gunfire has alerted the soldiers back in the camp. They start asking about the situation on their radios. Lee answers the inquiry, stating that a gate has appeared in the area. He confirms that the monsters were goblins, and they fled after the first skirmish. He glances at the shaking private and reports that there have been no casualties at the 5th post. The headquarters acknowledges his report and orders them to be on standby, defending their post. Hearing the order, Lee knows what's coming next. She will be arriving soon. The radio announces a 5-minute standby for an emergency, informing them that a gate has appeared in the area. Meanwhile, a red-haired woman is getting ready for battle. She is known as the Amon's Paladin, Lieutenant Siyuna. With bright red hair and deep blue eyes, she stands out. Lee knows that if she arrives, just like in his past life, she will stop the gate and take all the weapons. Any loot found from the monsters' drops will belong to the military. At that point, Lee understands that legendary-grade items will be taken by the military as well. He thinks about the legendary item Adamantium, which in the past was the ultimate item that earned him the title of Steel Emperor. If he misses this chance now, the next opportunity will come in 4 years, and he knows that the same future will be inevitable. He needs to get the item first, no matter what. Lee intends to finish the gate before the standby team arrives. Time is running out, and he thinks of ways to track the goblins. According to him, the monsters need a living human sacrifice. Using this knowledge, he analyzes possible locations where the goblins might go next. And Private Jummo regains consciousness and is shocked to see the corpse of the goblin. Lee quickly eliminates the possibility that the monsters are heading to the city for a sacrifice because their numbers are too low to invade such a large population. Suddenly, the radio starts buzzing. It's a call for backup from the 6th post, saying that the goblins have ambushed them. This report gives Lee a glimmer of hope. It seems he still has a chance to get the adamantium first, and he grins from ear to ear and gets ready to move as quickly as possible. He informs HQ that the 5th post will assist the 6th post immediately. However, the headquarters scolds him, stating they know the limitations of an F rank and believe he won't be much help. They insist that he stay on standby. But Lee isn't having it. He would rather get into trouble later than miss the chance to obtain such a rare item. Jumbo desperately pleads with Lee to stop what he's about to do, warning that this won't just end with him being confined to the guardhouse. His disobedience could lead to a military trial. But Lee insists that the 6th post is made up of archers or mages, only long-range players. They won't be able to handle the goblins and will die the instant the monsters get close. Still, Jumbo doesn't think this is enough of a reason to let his corporal charge into danger alone. He argues that Lee won't make much of a difference. But Lee has a strong rebuttal. He tells Jumbo that he won't be going alone, Jumbo will be coming with him. Jumbo's complexion turns pale as he hears this. It seems like he didn't see that coming. The 6th post is starting to panic. They urgently need backup, but to make things worse, their Corporal Kim is down. The goblins are wreaking havoc at their post, and all HQ can tell them is to guard their posts with their lives. It's clear now that the 6th post will be completely annihilated. The soldiers barricade themselves inside the guardhouse, but the monsters are giving it their all, trying to break it down. Corporal Kim is badly injured, yet he still uses his ability to enhance the durability of the post with his skills. His second-in-command is frantic, worried sick about Kim's condition. Kim has lost too much blood, his pale face showing the signs. Kim tells his subordinate that he can't hold on much longer and that the barrier will collapse at any moment. Desperate, pressing the second in command repeatedly spams the radio asking for immediate assistance. While peeking out the window, the private sees all the boulders getting ready to be launched at them again. He states that he can't see anything clearly, as the rocks are blocking the view, and he can't spot any light that the radio is referring to. Just then, a light shimmer from a distance. The private instantly recognizes it. This is the light he was ordered to aim at. It turns out that the one speaking on the radio is none other than Lee. Lee tells Private Park to aim for the light and adds that he will control the trigger. With a flick of his finger, Lee moves the trigger of the crossbow. Shocking the soldier, the arrow flies straight toward the light, passing through the floating rocks. The goblin Lee was riding on is struck by the speeding projectile in its midsection. After a brief delay, the arrow explodes, killing the goblin instantly. That entire maneuver only takes up 1% of his mana. It was all part of his plan. Lee knew the destructive power of the archer, and he applied it. And now with just a small amount of mana, he can efficiently eliminate the monsters. Of course, the other monsters notice what has just happened, along with the downed corporal and his private. The one most bothered by this sudden turn of events is the goblin shaman. He realizes that the pesky enemy from before is back on his trail. In a desperate attempt to finish the enemy off swiftly, he shifts the direction of the rubble toward Lee. The barrage of boulders comes flying fast, but the only thing it hits is the poor goblin who is still burning from the fire arrow. Lee manages to dodge in time, avoiding the attack. The archer is astonished to see all the rocks aimed at them disappear. He is then instructed to reload his bow quickly. He swiftly obeys the radio's command and reloads, receiving the same instruction to aim for the light. The goblin shaman checks to see if he hit his enemy. It's noticeable that the amulets he's wearing are down to only 2, meaning he has only 2 spells left. All he can find is his beaten subordinate, who is about to explode from the damage it has received. The shaman seethes in rage, failing once again to dispose of the annoying enemy. Meanwhile, in the bushes, Private Jomo sneaks around, following Lee's orders to locate the boss monster. He debates with himself how he will signal his corporal once he finds the shaman without dying first. Then, he sees the aftermath of Lee's havoc. Multiple goblins are running around in confusion, trying to put out the fire that has engulfed their bodies. The private is amazed, his admiration for Lee growing beyond measure. The corporal only told Private Jomo that he would distract the monsters, but this situation is turning into Lee handling the entire gate on his own. Jomo becomes careless, doesn't notice that one of the goblins is near him. He is spotted immediately, and the hideous creature screams as it raises its blade to strike the startled private. Jomo's jaw drops as he realizes the terrible mistake he has made. But just as the blade is about to reach him, Lee's flying bayon arrives, saving the young private just in time. Lee quickly turns on his light, signaling the archer to aim. He manipulates the arrow once again, striking the goblin right on target. After that, Lee leaves the private alone and signals him to ready his weapon. Jomo hastily obeys, still in shock. The young private can't help but wonder if Lee is really the same corporal he once knew. The goblins fall one by one, leaving the shaman in disbelief. Despite this, the shaman still won't reveal his location. Lee wonders why the shaman hasn't shown himself yet, especially with his entire army being picked off. Then, he realizes the true plan of the shaman. The cunning bastard is waiting for Lee's mana to deplete. Lee checks his mana and sees that he only has 1% left. He desperately starts searching for the boss's location, and while doing so, he hears his private asking for his help once again. When Lee turns around, he sees the goblin shaman holding Jomo by the head, using it as a hostage. Lee attempts to use his flying bayonet to strike, but the shaman, with a cunning grin, slowly moves his pointy staff toward the private's neck, threatening to kill him if Lee tries anything. Lee grits his teeth, realizing that with his subordinate taken hostage, his hands are tied. The corporal raises his hands, giving the goblins the impression that he's surrendering. Seeing this, the goblins immediately surround him and prepare to attack. But as they get closer, Lee thanks his private for delivering the checkmate in this drawn-out fight. With a flick of his finger, the trigger on Jomo's gun activates. This is the reason Lee had ordered the private to hold his rifle in that particular way. He had anticipated that the shaman would use the vulnerable private as a hostage from the start. The rifle begins unloading its magazine at the goblin, hitting the ugly bastard. The goblin spits a huge amount of blood, clearly receiving fatal damage. Corporal Lee dashes toward Jomo out of concern for his safety, dodging the sneak attacks from the other goblins. The boss monster, weakened by the gunfire, kneels down in pain, releasing his grip on the private. Jomo informs his corporal that he is fine. Lee feels a wave of relief and smiles, knowing he can now finish off the tenacious goblin boss. The shaman tries to escape, running as fast as he can while clutching his wounds. But Lee's flying bayonet follows him, striking the monster in the back. However, the blade bounces off. Lee clicks his tongue in frustration. He hadn't expected the boss to be wearing leather armor. Time is running out fast. Li's mana is left with only 9%. He continues to chase the fleeing goblin shaman relentlessly, determined not to let this opportunity slip away. The shaman rushes toward the gate, attempting to escape. At this rate, it seems the boss will manage to get away. But then Li notices something. The necklace the goblin shaman is wearing has steel on it. With only 7% of mana left, Li pours all of it into manipulating the necklace, halting the shaman in his tracks. His mana depletes quickly, but it's just enough for his attack to land on Goblin's face. Just when his mana is about to hit 0%, Li uses his bayonet to kill the shaman on the spot. Exhaustion and fatigue finally catch up to Li. He knows his ability still needs improvement, and his body must be in better shape since he tires too easily. He stops to catch his breath, and just then, he notices a bright firework shoots up from a distance. It's the signal of the holy light, meaning that the main army has arrived, along with the AMT's strongest player, Seo Yunha. Time is running out, and Li needs to find the adamantium steel before the army confiscates all the loot. He begins searching the shaman's corpse, and after a little struggle, he finally obtains the precious material. But as soon as he gets his hands on it, the soldiers arrive and order the corporal to raise his hands. Despite the goblin blood still covering the crystal, Li quickly sticks it in his mouth and swallows it in one gulp. The soldiers ask him to identify himself and provide his rank and name. Li slowly turns around, doing as he's instructed. Thankfully, he is able to eat the entire mana, though his face is now covered in disgusting green liquid. The soldier recognizes Li and immediately rushes to help him. The men inform the others to remain cautious since the gate is still open, meaning the enemies could still be around. Meanwhile, Seo Yunha notices something strange. She wonders how 4 regular soldiers managed to defeat a boss monster. She then observes that the wounds on each goblin's body have similar characteristics. She deduces that this is the work of just one person. It's clear why she is the AMT's paladin. Her deductive skills are exceptional. Li's system window informs him that the ingestion of the adamantium was successful, but it will take about 10 hours to be fully absorbed. Still, Li is satisfied, smiling as the soldiers carry him on a stretcher. However, this small detail doesn't escape the keen eyes of Paladin. She wonders why Li is laughing in this situation, hinting that something might be suspicious about him. Li doesn't care about anything else. The only thing on his mind is that he has finally obtained the adamantium, which will help him grow at an exponential rate. On the other hand, Siona isn't able to think much longer about his strange behavior, as another soldier reports to her that some goblins have been spotted running near the 6th post. Li, who is now resting, begins to feel the difference in his power. Though it will take some time to fully absorb the adamantium, he can already sense the resonance of metals around him. Today is the day that the Great Steel Emperor makes his comeback. Hit that like button as today's goal is 1,500 likes. Also, consider subscribing with the notification bell and to get notified as soon. Fast forward a few days after the barracks gate incident, and rumors are spreading about a certain F-rank soldier connected to the mysterious annihilation of the goblin monsters. Soldiers whisper about how the 6th post soldiers were waiting for their deaths when suddenly an F-rank corporal appeared and, with a sword, sliced up the goblins. While other soldiers are talking nonstop about the achievements of Li, one particular officer is disgusted by all the rumors. It is none other than Sergeant Osanguk, the wizard magician and specialty communication officer of the 2nd Squad. He refuses to believe that something like the rumor could be true. But one of his subordinates stands firm, confirming the validity of the rumor. Just then, a chubby officer named Wonsuk arrives there and commands the trembling soldier to lower his voice. Wonsuk scolds the poor soldier for lowering his hands when his surgeon has not yet accepted his salute. The terrified subordinate shakes in fear and tells them he will correct his behavior. The poor soldier's name is Anil. He is the same short bowman from the 6th post. Sanguk addresses the chubby officer, Wonsuk, and asks if someone who can rip goblins apart with his bare hands, would be able to take care of 3 boys and handle a gate raid on his own. Wonsuk replies that, no, he absolutely can't. Sergeant Sanguk agrees, saying that no matter how he thinks about it, there's no way an F rank, much less a worker, would be able to do something like that. He deems it all just a fluke. However, even if it was just a lucky chance where an F rank went wild, it still poses a problem for military discipline. Wonsuk takes this as an opportunity to mess with the corporal, saying that they can't let this incident become an issue for military discipline. It's a relatively peaceful day. The sun is shining, and the weather feels like a blessing from above. Inside one of the battalion commander rooms, a loud salute is heard. It's Li saluting the battalion commander and informing him that he has business to discuss. But deep inside, the Great Steel Emperor is complaining about them. Wishing they would just let the incident slide, why did they have to call him? Lieutenant Seo Yunha, the Black Paladin, and Lieutenant Minhee, the wizard, are both present in the room. The battalion commander opens his mouth with a very authoritative tone, aiming to intimidate Li. He asks if Lee really disobeyed the standby order, then successfully, albeit forcefully, repelled the first wave of the gate. This intimidating figure is Major Kim Kang-seok, also known as the King of Mountains. He is a B-rank player, ranked 166th in all of South Korea. Lee knows that if he says the wrong thing, he will end up facing a military trial, and that won't work in his favor. He wants to avoid ending up in the guardhouse. Lee doesn't cover up anything. He straightforwardly admits the truth, stating that he saw the gate outbreak while on duty and responded immediately. The Major struggles to comprehend how a mere F-rank soldier could achieve such a feat. Given his rank, Lee should have been torn apart in normal circumstances. Even though Lee was once called the Great Steel Emperor and humanity's last savior, the pressure from the Major is still overwhelming for Lee. But he knows if he backs down now, he could kiss his military career goodbye. With conviction, Lee expresses his feelings, saying that he feels like he has been scammed by the battalion commander. Lieutenant Min-hee immediately reacts, not willing to let such a disrespectful response slide, but he is stopped by the battalion commander, Major Kim Kang-seok, who wants to know why Lee feels this way. Lee continues, saying that there is something the commander has instilled in them since they entered the AMP. The Major is taken aback by his reply and becomes even more curious. Lee continues explaining, repeating something the Major always says. Every single time, the Major emphasizes to the cadets that no matter how low their rank is, if they approach using the AMP's tactical textbook, they can face even trolls, regardless of their rank. That's exactly what Lee did. According to Lee, the enemies he faced were just goblins, so it shouldn't be considered impossible. He protests that, although he did go against the command center's order to wait, the soldiers at the 6th post would have died if he hadn't gone to support them. Internally, the Great Steel Emperor praises himself for executing a rational attack. Now, it's time to hit the emotional side. He uses the Major's words again, stating that for a true soldier, there are no ranks. They must be prepared for the worst and fight with all their might. To add more weight to his speech, Lee says these are the words directly from the battalion commander, whom he respects deeply. He adds that he took the tactics they learned during their difficult training to heart and did his best to carry out the strategy with his life on the line. The only reason he endured his military life, even being mocked and looked down upon for being an F rank, was because of the true military mindset he learned from the battalion commander. So, to see the commander deny the results of that belief makes Lee feel like his entire military life is being rejected. That's why he feels like he has been scammed. Flashback shows the esteemed battalion commander, Kim Kang-seok, right around when he was appointed as a 2nd lieutenant. At that time, the gates had just started opening, and he almost lost his life during fight with orcs. However, without hesitation, he returned to the army and became an early foundational member of the AMP. In other words, he is a soldier through and through. Lee told him that he took the words of his superior as his belief and put his life on the line for his fellow soldiers. It's a truly touching story, and there's no way the Major would send him to a military trial. In present, the Major approaches Lee and squeezes his arms, his whole body towering over the corporal. Lee starts to feel nervous as the Major remains silent and gives him a strange look. Then, the Major declares that Lee must become a non-commissioned officer. A non-commissioned officer, or an NCO, is a military officer who has not yet earned a rank or commission. These individuals still hold leadership positions within their units, but rank lower than commissioned officers. Just then, Lee's notification window informs him that the absorption of the adamantium is complete, and he has acquired a new skill, Steel Physique, and the total weight of steel that Lee can now manipulate has increased to 2,558 grams. Steel Physique is a unique skill. It requires 5 mana points and temporarily strengthens a part of the body. And if Lee manages to swallow more than the fixed amount of high-hardness magic metal, the rank of this skill will increase. Meanwhile, the 2 lieutenants are stunned by the Major's sudden decision, with Seo Yunha looking particularly surprised, while Lieutenant Minnie struggles to hold his expression. But the battalion commander is dead serious, even tearing up after hearing the heroic tale of Lee. On the other hand, Lee sweats profusely. He was clearly not expecting such a turn of events. He feels like he might have bitten off more than he can chew. Later, in the 3rd Brigade 1st Battalion training room, the soldiers are busy doing their exercises. Among them is Lee, who is doing bench presses while cursing his bad luck. He thinks to himself that he stepped into a horrible situation, all while trying to avoid ending up in the guardhouse. From a distance, Sergeant Senguk and his subordinate, Won-seok, are watching Lee. They look at each other and quickly come to an agreement to mess with the newly promoted non-commissioned officer. Meanwhile, while wiping the sweat from his face, Lee recalls what had just happened. Thanks to the dissuasion from platoon leader Lieutenant Min-hee, Lee gained some time to think about the promotion. He knows there has never been an F-rank player who became an NCO before, but he would have preferred to live quietly and avoid attention. Unfortunately, it's a little too late for that. Just then, Wonsuk approaches him and asks if he is done using the bench, though Lee clearly isn't. The two stare at each other awkwardly for a moment. Lee breaks the silence, asking Wonsuk what he really wants. The fat officer smirks and says that if the famous NCO only uses this much weight, it will be an embarrassment to their unit. He then starts curling the barbell, showing off. The interaction quickly gains attention from other officers, and Lee immediately realizes this was all set up by Sergeant Sanguk. He knows that if he avoids Wonsuk now, he and Sergeant Sanguk will openly start bullying him, just like in his past life. Even though Lee has decided to lie low for now, he has no choice but to confront them. He tells Wonsuk that his arrival is perfect since he's feeling annoyed. Then, with an irritated expression, Lee invites him to do some sparring. Everyone in the gym is shocked, especially the two bullies. This is the best outcome they could have hoped for to embarrass the newly promoted NCO. News of the upcoming fight spread quickly, and soldiers gather around the octagon, excited to watch the two Wonsuk and Lee, now fully dressed for the fight. Wonsuk can't hold back his excitement about the match. He declares that it's time for the amazing Lee to learn some lessons. The crowd is all abuzz with anticipation. Here come the two young guns, chilling inside the ring, ready to bust out some killer moves. Wonsuk, grinning from ear to ear, decides to take the liberty of throwing the first punch. But Lee isn't holding back either. He stands there like a boss, fully geared up and ready to dish out some serious punches. The hefty fella swings his fist, aiming to hit Lee with all his might. That punch even leaves a trail of pressure in the air. Meanwhile, outside, two officers are casually hanging out under a streetlight, soaking in the beauty of the starry, shimmering night. Out of the blue, one of them blurts out in shock that Choi Yoonjun is taking a vacation. This guy with the green cap, named Chien, confesses that he wanted to witness the Choi fight firsthand. Rumor has it that Choi has the skills to be a legate swordsman. The lady officer accompanying him jumps in to save Officer Chien from his disappointed face. She reassures him that even though Sergeant Choi is currently the ace, there is another person in the mix, the future ace. And get this, he has the barbarian trait. Officer Chien is the tactical wizard of the Black Tiger unit, the most elite special forces unit in town. And good luck trying to find out more about them because their name is top secret, classified information. Chien feels disappointed that he missed the fight but still manages to hold it together, flashing a reassuring grin. The lady officer suggests to warn Officer Chien that since he's made the trek all the way here, he might as well check it out for himself. Going back empty-handed would be a bit awkward. Back in the arena, it looks like Lee is having a tough time against the incoming fists, which seem to be practically bigger than him. But Lee holds his ground like a champ, his footing solid. Another giant punch comes at him, but his reflexes are on point, dodging it like he's dancing with fate. Wonsuk realizes that one punch at a time isn't working, so he unleashes a full-on barrage of punches. But fear not, Lee's got this all figured out. He is dodging the attacks like he's in a championship dodgeball game. And just when things start to get chaotic, Lee stumbles, takes 2 steps back, and crashes into the arena's boundary net. The crowd holds its breath, but no worries, he is still standing strong. Lee quickly regains his composure, but before he can make his next move, the fat guy is already gearing up for another punch. Lee's face shows that he is about to face a big reality check. The people watching are shocked and scared because this is not what they were expecting. But then, the big guy's punch turns out to be another miss, hitting only the boundary net, while Lee skillfully avoids it, rolling on the ground. Finally, Lee stands up again, fully ready for what's next, while the big guy looks angry, almost steaming with frustration, as Lee keeps avoiding his attacks with an easy-going attitude. Lee casually moves his fingers, challenging the big guy to come at him. To everyone's surprise, that simple gesture seems to send the big guy into a rage, and it looks like round 2 is about to begin. The crowd is going wild with excitement. Just then, Warrant Officer Chien and the lady also arrive at the arena. The lady gently hints to Chien that the stage looks set up for him, and now he can clearly witness the audition. Chien, deep in help, but asks the lady for her opinion on what's going on. In response, the lady calmly explains that despite how things look, the punches from Wonsuk actually seem quite strong. However, what the lady does not notice is that despite the power, his punches aren't connecting with his opponent's face. Warrant Officer Chien notices the same thing. He wonders aloud what the point is of having such strength if he can't even land a single hit. To reassure him, the lady suggests that maybe Wonsuk is just lacking experience. She continues by saying that if he ever lands a proper punch, the guy in front of him will definitely be just as good as dead. Meanwhile, Sergeant Sanguk is practically screaming at the top of his lungs. He's pointing his fingers and throwing serious accusations at Wonsuk, saying he's going easy on Lee. With a stern tone, he orders Wonsuk to get his act together. The rest of the crowd doesn't hold back either. They join in, screaming even louder, stressing that this sparring session is serious. They urge the big guy to pull himself together, especially since so many bets have been placed on him. However, Wonsuk is giving it everything he has, but it feels like he is losing his control. The pressure from the audience is relentless, and at this point he is feeling the weight of it all. The pressure starts to take its toll on his body. It feels like a sudden heaviness is weighing him down, making every movement feel like an uphill battle. But despite this, he decides to charge at Lee again, determined to make a comeback. Now, this is where it gets interesting. All the metallic elements on his body, from zippers to lace holes, begin to shimmer with a mysterious blue energy. Lee is seemingly controlling this energy with his fingers. Lee is toying with the metal to make each step for the big guy feel heavier. Lee is using the ground beneath, which has metal in it, pull the metal on Wonsuk down. At one point, it feels like the fatty's feet are almost stuck in the arena's ground. But even then, Wonsuk doesn't give up. From a distance, he keeps throwing punches, but reality begins to sink in for him. He realizes that he is in deep trouble. Despite being in what feels like a literal hellhole, the big guy doesn't give up. He keeps throwing punches, looking like he's fighting in a swamp, making every move feel like an exhausting workout. This, of course, puts a big smile on Lee's face, and he's enjoying the chaotic scene in front of him. Then, out of nowhere, the big guy calls for a time break. In the middle of the battle, he suddenly raises concerns, saying his legs feel a bit strange. On the other side, Lee just smirks, clearly taking pleasure in his opponent's miserable state. The big guy grits his teeth and curses him, calling him every name possible. It's at this moment that the big guy decides it's time to show what he's really made of. Suddenly, without warning, he starts transforms like Frieza. His eyes shimmer, and a cloud of dust starts swirling around him, as if he is powering up. This surprising transformation brings a smile to Lady standing next to the warrant officer, and even Chien is intrigued. It seems the big guy has a hidden ace up his sleeve. Wonsuk's body changes. He grows into a muscular giant. Proudly, he declares that he is entering his berserker mode. Vines begin to pop out all over his forehead, creating a menacing aura as he prepares to take down the annoying mosquito that has been buzzing around him. Seeing the situation escalate, Lee decides it's time to get serious. He takes a strong, formidable stance, preparing for whatever comes next. The surgeon is not just freaked out now, he's downright alarmed. The sparring match has quickly shifted into something far beyond their usual battles. What intrigues him even more is that the opponent before them doesn't even flinch or shake in response to the giant's intimidating presence. Even Warrant Chien thinks that this battle has transformed into a life and death match between two wild animals, a raging buffalo and a deadly leopard with hidden fangs. He is completely invested in the fight now, finding the spectacle thrilling enough to continue watching. The lady is equally excited by the turn of events. She notices that the warrant officer is now considering Wonsuk as a worthy fighter. She expresses how witnessing someone in berserker mode, using body-strengthening techniques for the first time, is a real eye-opener for her. Now the giant stands tall, his body radiating confidence. He taunts Lee with threats, saying he will be 6 feet under in the blink of an eye. And then actually in the blink of an eye, Wonsuk disappears from his spot and lands a direct, devastating hit on Lee's belly. The blow is so powerful that Lee is sent crashing into the nearby boundary net wall. The crowd, including Sergeant Sanguk, they're absolutely losing it. They are ecstatic to see Lee finally take a hard hit. Sergeant Sanguk cheers loudly, fully supporting Wonsuk now, and his excitement adds even more wild energy to the already charged atmosphere. However, just after landing the powerful punch, the hand of Wonsuk starts trembling uncontrollably. Steam rises from it. Wonsuk wonders what kind of trickery is at play here. Just when he landed that punch, it felt like he had just punched solid steel. Lee, meanwhile, is still standing firm in a defensive stance, showing no signs of backing down. It turns out that just before the punch landed, Lee had used his steel hardening ability to strengthen his arms like steel. This body strengthening ability lets him temporarily harden any part of his body, but it consumes 5 points of mana each time he uses it. To add insult to injury, Lee mocks the big guy, calling him a cow and daring him to come at him. This only further enrages Wonsuk, who starts shrieking at the top as throwing him his lungs and calling Lee a worthless F-ranker. Wonsuk lunges once again, but to his dismay, his punch misses completely. Seizing the opportunity, Lee, still on the ground, looks for a chance to strike back. With determination, he begins turning his feet into steel. He mentions that using his skills like this feels like a waste against someone like Wonsuk, but he knows he has to do what it takes. With full force, Lee strikes his leg, causing the big guy to tumble down. Now, what was once a giant, cocky cow now looks like a helpless frog after taking a heavy blow to the face. The sheer impact leaves ripples around his face. Finally, Wonsuk falls to the ground and Lee, being relentless, starts throwing punches like there's no tomorrow. With each blow Wonsuk takes, the crowd grows silent. Warrant Officer Chien watches, relaxed like a boomer on Sundays, probably never expecting his neighborhood to have such a powerful opponent. let alone one with fists made of steel. Meanwhile, Lee is relentlessly punching the fatty, as though he's aiming to break a record for the longest combination of hits. In the officer's mind, this is like nature at work, a cheetah finally catching its prey. Suddenly, the big guy decides it's time to fight back. With surprising speed, he grabs Lee by the collar and lifts him off the ground with his huge hands. One-Suk's face is now a battered mess, with one eye nearly popping out of its socket, turning a deep purple. Grinding his teeth, One-Suk spits insults, claiming he has no idea what tricks Lee is using. One-Suk is now angrier than ever, and along with his anger, his size has grown even more. One-Suk swings Lee into the air, preparing to slam him back to the ground. He yells at Lee, cursing him to die. It's like watching Rey Mysterio being tossed around by an overly excited Big Show. On the other hand, Lee realizes he's in serious trouble, but he's not about to give up. Clinging to the fist of One-Suk as if his life depends on it, Lee uses his electrified legs to grab him, completely catching him off guard. The two are now only inches from crashing to the ground, and it looks like the giant is completely stunned, stuck in a deadlock, and losing his strength. However, just before his punch crashes to the ground, One-Suk stops his arm midair. Meanwhile, Warrant Officer Cheon is in full observation mode, completely focused. He's impressed that, despite being a brute, the big guy has impressive instincts, avoiding a move that could have snapped his arm. If he'd landed that punch, he'd have broken his own arm right then and there. He then glances at Lee and starts to wonder if he might have overestimated the steel guy. He concludes that it turns out that going up against a barbarian like One-Suk who uses body strengthening techniques is no easy task. Meanwhile, in this deadlock, where neither can move, One-Suk taunts Lee, asking if he is really struggling so much to save his life. He gets cocky and twists Lee while mocking him, saying if he really thinks he could crush his arm like that. Lee screams in pain, but he refuses to give up. With all his strength, Lee begins to bend the massive fingers of One-Suk. The giant, now even more frustrated, can't believe this relentless persistence from Lee, and finally, he decides to release Lee from his grip. Seizing the opportunity, Lee pulls off a move worthy of a seasoned fighter. He grabs the giant's face with his legs and leaps over him swiftly. In a flash, Lee places hands around the neck of One-Suk, with his fingers wrapping around it. Now, the giant's neck is in his grip, ready to be twisted, and this chaotic neighborhood showdown could end in a deadly finish. Warrant Officer Cheon enjoys the sight of Lee pulling off a rear naked choke. He feels excited, realizing that the once powerful giant is now nothing more than a helpless prey. Body strengthening may pump up muscles, but it can't protect against a compressed artery. Despite the struggle, the stubborn giant refuses to drop his cocky attitude. He taunts Lee, claiming all he needs to do is use his strength to break free. Little does he know, Lee has already figured it out. His sly grin gives a hint of the lesson about to unfold. Lee can harden any part of his body like steel, and he does exactly that. He hardens both his arms and keeps choking One-Suk. The system warning pops up, notifying Lee that he is pushing the limits of his strength and body transformation. He is using his abilities over a wider range than his current threshold allows. Lee, now shimmering with blue lightning, shows he is putting everything into taking down the giant. However, the challenge proves to be much more difficult than he expected. Meanwhile, Sergeant Sangak and all others are watching this in disbelief. They never expected it. Panicked, one of Sergeant Sangak's lackeys turns to the master and suggests that they intervene before it's too late. He tells Sergeant that One-Suk is too stubborn to submit, and he might sign up for a lifetime subscription to the afterlife. In the middle of this intense struggle, Lee shares the same sentiment. He wonders why this giant is so incredibly stubborn. With a determined look in his eyes, he locks gazes with Sergeant Sangak, sending a silent message that this is a final warning. Sangak, looking like he just saw a ghost, is sweating bullets, realizing that he may have bit off more than he can chew. One-Suk is sinking into despair, contemplating the unthinkable, losing to someone he considers a loser like Lee. His half-closed eyes scan the crowd, worried about the impending humiliation. After all, he's supposed to be the future ace, and he's not about to let his reputation crumble. Steam starts pouring out of his muscular body again, probably driven by a mix of desperation and an exaggerated sense of pride. One-Suk's muscles suddenly begin growing, tearing through his shirt. It's like the guy has activated another buff, reaching what seems to be his final powerful form. However, the irony is that despite these newly massive muscles, they seem utterly useless when it comes to escaping the chokehold. His neck is still firmly tangled in the grip of Lee. Warrant Officer Cheon cannot hold his excitement. Seeing someone in the using branch strengthening techniques twice as unheard of in his neighborhood career. However, he reckons that if One-Suk still fails to escape this chokehold, then it's game over. Those muscles, apparently, are as effective as a flashlight in the bright sun. He continues to wonder who the predator is and who the prey is in this fight. Meanwhile, Lee gives it his all. He tightens the chokehold, determined to settle the score. One-Suk starts losing his composure, and soon he is screaming in pain. In a dramatic climax, he collapses to the ground, taking Lee down with him. The showdown reaches its peak, and the crowd is left in suspense, waiting for what happens next. Just as the dust settles, the crowd is left in a state of terror, shaken by the spectacle they just witnessed. Meanwhile, Warrant Officer Chien is grinning widely, thrilled by the unexpected turn of events. In the end, Lee stands tall, victorious, like a true leopard, declaring himself the undisputed champion of this wild showdown. It's the middle of the night inside the training building, and in the arena, a group of guys nervously gathers around Won-suk, checking if he's still alive. Thankfully, he has only fainted, narrowly avoiding a knockout blow that could have ended the fight for real. Park Jumu, towel in hand, sprints toward Lee, ready to give him a victory hug. However, the nonchalant champion stops him with a simple hand, all while keeping his gaze locked somewhere else. Nearby, Sanguk tries to hide his face, probably turning away to shield himself from the shame of the loss, while Lee looks at him with a determined look, almost digging into his defeated expression. Suddenly, Warrant Officer Chien approaches Lee and asks him for his name. Without hesitation, Lee salutes his superior and introduces himself as Lee Heinwook of the First Company. However, he can't shake the question of why this man has appeared out of nowhere. The warrant officer returns the salute and introduces himself as Lieutenant Chien, the raid tactics instructor of the Black Tiger unit. He compliments Lee on his impressive display of skill and strength during the showdown. Without wasting any time, the warrant officer extends his hand and invites Lee to join the special warfare raid. At this point, the onlookers in the background begin losing their minds. They are shocked by this sudden invitation to Lee to the prestigious Black Tiger unit. One spectator whispers in disbelief, if the scout just offer him a position in the Black Tiger unit, they're the best troops in the entire AMP. Another spectator laughs, finding it ridiculous. Lee, feeling the need to clear things up, explains to the warrant officer that he is just a lowly F-ranked player. In response, Warrant Officer Chien, brimming with enthusiasm, makes it clear that ranks are just standards set by ordinary people, and they need warriors like Lee in their ranks. I hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, hit that like button as today's goal is 1,500 likes. Comment next part down below for the next part. Also, consider subscribing with the notification bell on to get notified as soon as a new video drops onto the channel. You can also join the channel to support me financially and watch videos before public release. I'll meet you in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching.